Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amy Myers, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar, Flexible by Design, Formative and Accessibility Strategies for Every Learner, brought to you by the California Department of Education. This webinar is the first of 3 in a Formative Assessment Shared Practices webinar series. So with that, I will pass it over to our presenters for today. So please give a warm welcome to Rebecca Bowers from the CDE.
Thank you, Amy. So we'll start with a big picture of the full Formative Assessment Shared Practices webinar, which consists of 3 different webinars, each held on a Thursday, 2 weeks apart. All resources shared in each of the webinars are from the Smarter Balance Tools for Teachers website and are available free of cost to all California educators. In your resource guide, we have included a direct link to the Tools for Teachers website and to a quick reference guide with directions on how to self-register. For this first webinar in the series, titled Flexible by Design, Formative and Accessibility Strategies for Every Learner, you will hear how the educators who serve a variety of different roles, content areas, regions of the state, and student groups have all found the formative assessment and accessibility strategies and tools for teachers to be extremely useful and easy to embed into everyday instruction. Our second webinar in the series, titled By Teachers for Teachers, Unlocking Classroom-Ready Science Resources, will be held on February 12th and will highlight some of the science instructional resources or lesson plans that are available in Tools for Teachers and developed by California educators. And our third and final webinar in the series, titled Professional Learning Resources for Supporting English Learners, will be on February 26th and will focus on the professional learning resources available in Tools for Teachers that can be used to support understanding of the English language proficiency assessments for California, or the ELPAC. With that, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for today's webinar, the first in this series. And please, if you haven't already, register for the 2 remaining webinars, and please spread the word to your colleagues because this might be just that opportunity that they're looking for professional development. The direct link to register is, you guessed it, in your resource guide. So before we begin, I'd like to start with a quick foundation of the resources that we will be highlighting during today's webinar. Now, as mentioned before, the focus of this webinar is on the formative assessment and accessibility strategies available in the Tools for Teachers website that are available to all educators in California free of cost. Once you are on the Tools for Teachers website, you can select Professional Learning button on the left side of the screen, and from there you can select either the Formative Strategy Resources or the Accessibility Strategy Resources to view a full list of both types of strategies. There are currently 44 formative assessment strategies and 68 accessibility strategies, each providing a full description of the strategy with a step-by-step directions on how to use it. Many even include printable attachments for you to download and use right away. The formative assessment strategies, which all have the formative assessment clover icon, include short exit tickets or fist to 5 activities or longer activities like Socratic seminars, which you'll hear about from Tanya today. And they all have the common goal of checking where students are in their learning. The accessibility strategies, which all have a silhouette of a person icon, are available to help with ideas of how to help students access and engage with the content, no matter what background experience or knowledge that they already have. Some educators find it helpful to implement the accessibility strategies into everyday instruction to help determine which resources might be helpful to specific students, as many of these accessibility strategies are similar to the embedded accessibility resources that are available on all CAASPP and ELPAC assessments. It is important to note, though, that there are accessibility tools for all students and that they are not necessarily limited to students with individualized education plans or IEPs. So there's also a lot of flexibility in the way these strategies are used. Educators can use them as they are described on the website, or they can modify them to fit their unique needs. So you'll see some of that with our presenters today on how they've modified the strategies to fit their classroom needs. So we hope you're able to take some very helpful ideas with you to share right away. So today, we will get to hear insights from multiple perspectives, including teachers, administrators, and even county office staff. So whatever role it is that you serve, we hope you can make a connection and apply this information right away. Presenting with us today, we have Jamie Bonato from the Sacramento County Office of Education, Brent Fulmer from the Pershing Elementary School in San Juan Unified School District, Patrice Harris from Bell Mountain Middle School in Menifee School District, and Derek Gildner and Tanya Burtok from Corona High School in the Corona Norco Unified School District. So now, for the moment you've been waiting for, I'd like to introduce our first set of presenters, Jamie Bonato and Brent Fulmer, who have worked together over the years and are amazing colleagues. So Jamie, take it away.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hello, my name is Jamie Bonato, and I am a coordinator for the Sacramento County Office of Education's Teacher Intern Program. We are a teacher credentialing program, but before serving in this current role, I was a high school math teacher for over 20 years and then a middle school site administrator. I love working with teachers and especially new teachers, so I am living my dream. Sacramento County is one of 58 California county offices of education. The Sacramento County Office of Education includes 13 school districts and many charter schools serving over 250,000 students. Sacramento County Office of Education, or SCOE as we call ourselves, provides assistance, support, and oversight for schools and districts in the county. We also provide instruction directly to students enrolled in our SCOE schools. So a little bit about our county student population. 18% of our students are classified as English learners, 14% of our students receive special education services, and 64% are socioeconomically disadvantaged. I am so excited to talk with you today about tools for teachers. It is a great one-stop shop for finding instructional strategies to use with students, and I also use it with my teacher candidates and teachers. I recently taught a methodology course for teacher candidates, and I referenced the site as I built the course to make sure that I was including a range of different instructional strategies. Looking specifically at the formative assessment strategies, many teachers are already using these strategies and don't realize it until it's explicitly called out. You all are probably already using these strategies in your own classroom. For example, I visited Brent's class. You're going to hear from him in just a little bit. His class was solving Sudoku puzzles, and I saw strategic questioning, think, pair, share, and I saw Brent using a visual protocol. Another example of something teachers may already be doing without having explicitly named it is strategies such as global notes or using a highlighter. Global notes is an accessibility strategy that's found in Tools for Teachers, and it also appears as a tool on the ELPAC assessment. To implement this strategy in a classroom or environment without technology, the tool can look like a note sheet or a notepad. So Brent's going to share more in detail about some of the strategies that he uses in his classroom. So I'm going to turn it over to Brent.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brent Fulmer. I'm the 5th grade rapid learner teacher at Pershing Elementary in the San Juan Unified School District. There are 3 different rapid learner schools in our district. We used to be the self-contained GATE program within our district. Now we are meet the needs of our high-achieving students. I want to share with you this afternoon how I use formative assessments and accessibility strategies with the different student groups that I serve. Pershing Elementary has 494 students. 8% of those students are EL. 16% are special education population, and 45% socioeconomically disadvantaged. One of the first strategies that I'd like to discuss with you today is 4 corners. I first learned about this strategy when I taught 1st grade. I used to use four corners frequently because I love the idea of getting kids up out of their seats, moving around in the classroom as much as possible. Kids love the activity. They love the movement. They got excited when they knew we were doing four corners. So I did things like give them words with long or short vowel sounds or beginning sounds and have them go to the part of the room that contained that card. When I went up to the upper grades, I saw great value in four corners with my older kids. And I usually start at the beginning of the year doing some SEL type activities with four corners where I might ask questions like, or I might make statements like, I like roller coasters, or I love Brussels sprouts. And I have the kids go to the area of the classroom, whether it be I strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree. And I really like that Likert scale. And so I use it throughout the school year. In fact, we're getting ready to start doing some persuasive writing and opinion writing. And we're also getting ready to talk about the American Revolution. So one of the activities that I do is have the kids research a historical character and find out what their take was in the American Revolution and have them go around the classroom. And I say, would your characters like to declare independence or not, and have them get into different groups based on how well they agree with that statement and discuss it within their groups. I also use this. One of the most exciting experiences I've ever had in my classroom is after I read the novel When You Reach Me with my kids. And if you're familiar with that novel, it is definitely genre bending. And so one of the biggest arguments, I will say, in my classroom was asking the kids, what genre is this novel? And so now I use the four corners to do that, where I have a group of kids go to historical fiction, realistic fiction, fantasy, or realistic fiction. And I have them meet with their groups, give the different reasons why they went to that section, and then explain it to the class. And what I really like about this activity is I do it again maybe later on that day or the next day, and to see if any of the kids have changed their mind based on the persuasive arguments that other students in the class have given. In the pictures, let's see, sorry about that. Let's see, I think I want to go on to gallery walks right now. So let's talk about gallery walks. I love doing gallery walks with my students. Again, it gives them an opportunity not only to get out of their seats, but it gives them the opportunity to see other kids' thinkings. So there's a number of activities that I like to do at the beginning of the year, kind of building up their math brain at the beginning of the year. And I really like to instill the idea of a gallery walk with them. So I have the kids get into group, work out a problem, come up with some kind of solution. And then I teach the kids how to walk around the classroom and look at other kids' work. Once they've done that, they might see some strategies. They might see some thinking that was new to them. They go back to their original group and modify their work if they saw something that maybe was an idea that they would like to steal or incorporate into their work. So in the pictures that I have here, you see in the center picture, there are arrangements of pennies where the kids are coming up with beginning algebraic expressions really to describe that set of pennies. And they're trying to come up with an efficient way to go out about doing that. In the picture all the way to the left, you see a bunch of kids that are gathering around the whiteboards in order to look at different strategies that their classmates have made. So how do you get started implementing these formative assessment strategies? Well, for new teachers, I encourage you to take a look at all the strategies. Just click on some that maybe look interesting to you. And I like to use the rule of three to make sure that I have given something fair treatment. You know, the first time we implement a new strategy, not everyone is understanding what we are doing. And I find that sometimes it takes 2 or 3 repetitions in order for the kids to be comfortable with the strategy. So the first one is typically clunky. And so I try it out at least 3 different times to see if it's something that works for me. For veteran teachers, and I am so lucky that I get to work in the intern program with Jamie as well. And we are constantly discussing strategies, and I'm constantly stealing strategies from the interns. So as a veteran teacher, I like getting on the site, looking at some of the strategies to breathe new life into my lessons. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Jamie to go over more about what's available in the tools for teachers.
Thanks, Brent. Always love hearing from you. As I said earlier, formative assessment and accessibility strategies and tools for teachers is a great one-stop shop. In fact, just today, I was talking to another educator who was looking for a bank of formative assessment strategies to share with teacher candidates, and I referred him to Tools for Teachers. As teachers, we can get into this day-to-day groove of lesson planning, and we forget about the different strategies that can be used in teaching. Sometimes simple ideas will slip my mind. For example, when I was preparing for this webinar and I was preparing to teach the course last month, I was looking at different strategies and I saw global notes, as I referenced earlier, and I decided to infuse it into the course. To do that, I just gave each candidate or participant in the class a small notebook and as a place to keep their thinking and thoughts as we worked through the course. It was a small addition that gave all participants a tool they could use to support their thinking and learning. So overall, tools for teachers can be used as a refresher or an idea hub when you're lesson planning. If you want to insert a formative assessment strategy and you just feel like you've been doing the same strategies over and over, it's a great container of ideas of things that you can plug into your lessons. So Brent and I, or we'll open up to whoever, are going to take questions now.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm going to start real quick, but thank you, Jamie and Brent, for sharing so many great ideas for implementing these different types of strategies. And from the CDE, it's really nice to see how the strategies can be used at both the county level and at the site level. And we'll see some others in just a moment as well. So like Jamie said, we'll take some time to respond to a few questions, but it's really clear that you guys do see the power that these different strategies can provide both teachers and students. And I do want to see if there are some questions coming in. It looks like a lot of people are answering them already in the background, but I have a question for both of you, either one of you, whoever wants to answer. So I wanted to see, in my role at the CDE, I get the question a lot from folks that have never been to the Tools for Teachers website, and they're a little bit nervous just because there are so many different websites out there. So, and I know I see Brent nodding. I just wanted to see if there's any advice that either one of you can give to teachers that have never been into the Tools for Teachers website, whether it be with the strategies or there's lesson plans in there. So any advice just to get started?
I would say my advice is just poke around and see what you find. Every time I go in there, I find something new and it's like, oh, I got to try that. Of course, I have 30, 40 different things that I want to try right now, but that's my advice. Go poke around.
Yeah, I second poking around. And this just came up today. Someone asked, hey, is there a bank or a list of formative assessment strategies? And I started to Google like formative assessment. And then I was like, wait, just go to Tools for Teachers and they're there. So, that's usually now what I refer people to because it's there. It's like a one-stop, everything's just in one place for you.
That's great. I remember in my teacher credentialing class, we were grabbing strategies from everywhere, trying to pull them together. So, and that was many years ago. But now it's great to just be able to see these strategies that I had on little Post-it notes everywhere in one place, like you're saying. And I know I talked to Brent earlier about, not being familiar with the website. And then he goes, oh my gosh, I'm doing all this stuff already. So it's really neat to just see your work validated and then to extend it once you're in the website. So I think Brent and Jamie, I see questions being answered in the chat, but if questions come in, feel free to type them in there. When Patrice is finished, we may bring you in again if there's any questions for you. And then folks in the audience, feel free to keep the questions coming in the Q&A, and whether it be for Jamie, for Brent, they'll be looking as well. But thank you both. We really appreciate all the great tips you guys have. So now, before we turn over to Patrice, I do want to mention Patrice Harris. She is our next presenter, and she comes from the principal role. So we're going to kind of switch gears and hear how these strategies can be used in not just with the students, but with educators as well. So Patrice, take it away.
Well, good evening, afternoon, everyone. As stated, I'm Dr. Patrice Harris. I'm the principal of Bell Mountain Middle School. I've been here for about 4 years, and I've been in education 23 years in counting up. I've been a reading intervention teacher in elementary, English language arts teacher at middle school and high school, and my current work is an instructional leader. And it's provided me with the opportunity to walk through, watch, and learn from my teacher colleagues, and they're putting their heart and soul into everything that they do for students. But before we move on, I would like to start off by kind of describing what my school looks like. So at Bell Mountain Middle School, we have a total of 1,066 students in climbing. I am already at 1,100 students plus. I am at 5% of multilingual learners here and growing. My special education population is at 15%, and my socioeconomically disadvantaged students is at 62%. We have a very, very awesome multicultural, multi-language student population here, and I'm excited to share what our teachers are doing as well as what I do with our teachers. So thank you, Brent, for talking about Gallery Walk. This is a great springboard on what we can do, what we do here, and what we can do with our teacher teams as we model for what we're going to do with our students. So Gallery Walk is used for our teams here at Bell Mountain to examine our current progress as a professional learning community as we are continuing to grow. So during our staff meetings, we sometimes will split up into 6 groups. We count them off, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then each team may create a 1-sentence summary of an article we read, and we do a gallery walk. And this gallery walk allows us to process different perspectives. And in some cases, it expands the ideas of our teacher peers. For example, each person would read an article, and we can say the title of it is "What Defines an Effective Professional Learning Community?" And then next, they write down keywords and main ideas. And then the next step is everyone in the group contributes to creating a 1-sentence summary that captures all of their ideas. We don't use AI for that. And we report the finished product to the entire group during our professional development. And then this type of formative assessment allows everyone to synthesize what was read, identify the vocabulary that would support their understanding of what we read, share their thoughts using academic language, and collaborate with others. And I've also seen this in the classroom, and I've seen the gallery walk used in classes to examine the results of group work during a gradual release lesson to help students examine the results of other students, which emphasizes that even though the answer to a question or solution to a problem is the same, the process to get there, it may be different. So as we move on from gallery walks to talk about some other things that we do, we also do what we call 3 facts and a fib. We don't say 3 facts and a lie, but sometimes we use it. But it's also used during our meetings to quickly review important information or as a warm-up to get us going when students are in the classroom. We do it to check for prior knowledge. This has been used during staff meetings because I've seen teachers, as we prepare students for grade level assessments, using the strategy because it's a quick way to determine the readiness of a student, and it's also a quick way to determine the readiness of staff to talk about things that may be controversial. So we sometimes in the classroom will take an individual summative type assessment or move on to more rigorous material once we've assessed the readiness. So this has been done in small groups in the classroom, and then students are given time to share their results with the entire classroom. And this formative assessment strategy requires students to use textual evidence to support their answers in English language arts, science, history, math, electives, and physical education classes. This strategy can be enhanced by having students create their own three facts and one fib. And then in staff meetings, I use it to lead us into conversations about topics that can typically be confusing or maybe even controversial, to emphasize the need for us to understand that there are differing perspectives and that research and data help us to understand the complexities of our beliefs and how we can approach them. So this is how we model our three facts and one fib within our staff so they can take it back to their students to guide their instruction. The next thing that we do across our school site that I've also seen is accessibility strategies. One of the things that is widespread here that we do as a school site is we understand that it's an important part of our academic and school culture and climate. We have to be cognizant of the fact that we need to differentiate as much as possible without sacrificing rigor. So in the spirit of UDL, Universal Design for Learning, where all students, meaning all students, general education and students with 504s or special education services, they get what is needed to engage them in academic curriculum. So we do this through the use of alternative ways to demonstrate mastery of content, which can include, it includes verbal responses, drawing, text to speech, speech to text. But I will be talking a little bit about closed captioning, brain breaks, and read alouds. So first, we'll talk about closed captioning. This is an accessibility resource we have used, and at the end of every staff meeting, I include a video launch. So a video launch is designed to send students or staff out with energy, focus, and a smile, starting them off on a course of action for what's next. It's done at the end of class, or you can do it at the end of a staff meeting. And it's a way to sort of seal the deal. And this is a way to make sure that there's an understanding about the next steps. So I make sure that the video includes closed captions to ensure that everyone, which includes those who are hearing impaired, are multilingual learners, that they get the message. It's something that we use universally in our school site. If a teacher is playing any type of video, closed captioning is always checked to make sure that all students are able to access the information and or message that the message that is shared during a video presentation. So we have made this minimal standard as a whole because some of you know we cannot always identify early on who may develop a loss of hearing or students who may not have been identified. So additionally, we use closed caption because it helps with reading fluency for students who are reading as well. So the next thing we do is brain breaks. It's another accessibility resources we use when our team is reviewing data. So for the adults, the brain breaks are great when you're doing something that it has a heavy cognitive load, as well as students. So this may include time to converse with colleagues. We can use a think, pair, share, which we saw a little bit earlier, and also as role playing for problem solving. These brain breaks, they build community and collegiality among students and staff alike, similar to what has been observed in classes where I've seen these brain breaks manifested, where students are engaging in gamified academic activities that are available through our adopted curriculum. So check your adopted curriculum, it may already be there. These brain breaks are beneficial because they enhance productivity for tasks with a heavy cognitive load for students and adults. It also creates those aha moments that we look for when we're completing activities that require heavy cognitive load. So remember, for adults, brain breaks are great when reviewing and strategizing next steps after reviewing data, for example. And then for students, brain breaks are beneficial when learning multi-step mathematical computation or multi-layered written assignments, or even discussion topics that could potentially cause heavy debate among students or even your staff. And the last thing we're going to go over is read aloud. Read aloud can be seen all across content areas at my school. And we sometimes do it in our staff meetings as well. We have students here, and our students speak over 19 different languages at my school. So Read Aloud is a common accessibility strategy that my teachers will use and give access to our English language learners, then they can practice speaking. This strategy is used where teachers will turn on a YouTube channel that will read excerpts from classic novels. It's used in math with the adapted curriculum, audio to reread directions or review mathematical computations. And then for other subjects such as foreign language and history, we use Read Aloud to exercise listening and speaking standards with a structured classroom lesson, or to have students practice the art of focus notes for those Avid schools. Additionally, Read Aloud may also be done for us old school educators as popcorn reading to keep students engaged and accountable as we move through close reading strategies in small groups or as a whole group activity. This particular strategy is easily implemented and can be very low risk. So if systems have been put into place in the classroom, it will help within in that environment and also in the environment where you're meeting with staff. But last but not least, I want to stress the intentional planning that is in place. We are currently working to streamline our common formative assessment strategies at our school. Looking at all curriculum, similar to my colleagues from other districts who shared today. So our team has done intentional planning during our staff meetings and our teacher-led collaborative meetings to streamline the use of formative assessment strategies at my school. The first thing that I did, though, so we have to remember there's steps to this. As the head instructional leader, I introduced all of my staff to some of the assessment strategies and reintroduced to other teachers tools for teachers and showed them the website and reminded them how many tools are there for them to use. I next made sure that everyone was able to access the website so I could troubleshoot for those who were having difficulty. Next, I took them to the formative assessment strategy page and the accessibility strategy page within our tools for teachers to show them how to access these strategies. Currently, we're doing the work of choosing grade level and subject common assessment strategies with the intention of collecting data to assess our instruction. Our accessibility strategies are integrated each school day, not only to assist our special education students, but to work on listening and speaking standards across all subjects. This is ongoing work, and we continue to evaluate the investigation cycle that will inform our instruction. We continue to support equity, fairness, and hold high expectations as we build our collective efficacy across our school site. So thank you for hearing a little bit about Bell Mountain Middle School and what we're doing to help our students and our staff.
Thank you so much, Dr. Harris. And before you go away, we have some questions for you. But I really just appreciate how much you shared how these strategies can be used with adults, because a lot of times we just think, tools for teachers using them with students, but it's really neat to hear how you have embraced the website. I know you have also contributed lessons to the website, and just made it work for your role as a principal. So just like Jamie, at the county office, it's really neat to see how these strategies can be woven into different roles. So I have a similar question for you, but thinking of your role as a principal, have you ever had any teachers that were reluctant to use tools for teachers or any of the strategies, but and it can even expand to lesson plans, but tools for teachers in general? I know the website isn't out there to everyone just yet, but do you have any advice or any stories that you can share regarding getting people started?
Absolutely. Being in such a nice size staff here and a growing education community, I did have a few resistors because sometimes we are trusting to what we have done before, and because we know that it works. So having that conversation that these are ways to enhance what you're already doing and not necessarily to replace everything. I did show my resisting staff members how easy it was to access it. And we springboarded off of that into looking at some of the lesson plans and things that are available. But I will say the best place to start that we started was really to take a deep dive into it and to look at all 44 and to commit to trying one. And the feedback that was given with at least trying one was most of them realized they were already doing some form of it, but that taking a deeper dive into them on our teacher tools website has allowed them to start to get a little fancy with it and combine them sometimes, the two formative assessment strategies. Maybe 1 minute they pair share, but then they break out into their gallery walk after a pair share. So they've gotten really fancy with it and started to really take it on because it gives them a great instant data from their students, and they're finding that those formative assessment strategies do benefit and help them to move through their unit plans.
Great. Yeah, that's excellent. Reasons to get started too. I know that, yeah, there's 44, it could be overwhelming, or then 68 accessibility. And I love that you touched on the accessibility strategies because oftentimes those get overlooked. So I think it's super powerful that you not only, that teachers are using them with their students, but you're using them and modeling them for adults. I think that's great. And along those lines too, there was a question about other administrators. So what would your recommendation be to other administrators who are looking to introduce tools for teachers to their staff if maybe they're not as familiar with the website themselves? But what advice do you have for those administrators to share? And I know your last slide too, your implementation plan, that's bringing to light those steps, but any nice powerful way to get them started to share?
Well, I got what I did was I had some of those short conversations to find out what the teachers were doing as I walked through their classrooms. What formative assessment strategies are they already using? And then when I went into our staff, I was able to highlight what I've already seen that we were doing, and then to help them build on that. So once you can identify what your teachers are already doing, then you can build on that through introducing that. There's 44 different ways. One thing I noticed is that we were leaning heavily on pair share because it's quick, it's easy. Pair share is one of those things we do naturally. Talk to your partner because the kids don't get out of their seats. But I think as we started to really take a deeper dive into our formative assessment strategies, that everyone became more comfortable with the how, because it was being demonstrated within our staff meetings for them to see, okay, it's really not that difficult to plan into what I do all the time because the students are producing. So we've done this. Okay, we can do it this way, or maybe I can alter it a little bit to make it suit what we're doing, shorten it or lengthen it for the time of the extent of the period. So I would say other administrators who are looking, I would say go do an assessment and see what your teachers are currently doing, and then you build from it. So I knew that we were using pair share quite a bit. So I identified that, and that's what our springboard was. We started looking at pair share again, and I confirmed how many teachers were using. I says, let's build on that at this point. So that's a great way to start, is to find out what your teachers are already doing as far as formative assessment throughout their lessons.
That's great. And that's a formative assessment in its own, in a way. You're using that to broaden the horizons of formative assessments. I love it. I know, yeah, when I was a teacher, I had administrators come and sit in the back of my classroom and take notes of who which side of the room I was calling on most, all these things you don't think of as a teacher. So to have an administrator taking that, approach to go in and say, you're using this strategy, can we mix it up? That's just enormously helpful. And why not? There's so many things out there that can really help So thank you so much, Patrice. I think that we have learned so much, about how these can be used with educators. And so I really appreciate it. We may pull you back in for Q&A later as questions come in more. And thank you so much. And we'll turn it over in just a few minutes to our last. So I want to round out our last set of presentations today. We're going to turn to our final set of presenters from Corona High School in the Corona Norco Unified School District. We have Derek Gildner, an assistant principal of Corona High School, who will provide an overview of the students served at both the district and the site level, as well as how he promotes Tools for Teachers website with the teachers at his school. Then Tanya Burtok, an English teacher at Corona High School, will dive into the formative assessment and accessibility strategies that she uses with her students, as well as ways that she customizes the strategies to fit well with the different groups of students she serves. So that customization piece is really exciting, which we'll hear in just a minute. So Derek, take it away.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. My name is Derek Gildner, and I'm an assistant principal at Corona High School. I'm in my 22nd year in education with experience as a high school science teacher and as a teacher on special assignment prior to moving into administration. I wanted to briefly ground my part of today's conversation in the context of our school community. Corona High School serves students in grades 9 through 12 with a total enrollment of 2,307 students. Approximately 13% of our students are identified as English language learners. About 15% receive special education services, and 87% of our students are identified as socioeconomically disadvantaged. That context sets the stage for the work I want to focus on next, and that's how formative assessments allow us to check for understanding as learning is happening. As we think about improving outcomes for students across classrooms, it's easy to focus on large initiatives or new programs. But what we found, though, is that one of the most impactful levers and one that can support more equitable outcomes when implemented well is checking for understanding while learning is taking place. And when teachers regularly gather information about student understanding, they're not just responding instructionally in the moment, they're also generating evidence that can be examined and discussed collaboratively. And that connects directly to an essential question that guides our PLC work. How will we know if our students are learning the material? And formative assessments allow us to engage with that question during instruction. And if this kind of evidence matters in our PLC conversation, then the next natural question becomes, how do we support our teachers in using formative assessment strategies effectively and consistently across our classrooms? And then that's where Tools for Teachers has been helpful for us. Tools for Teachers provides a shared place for our teachers to explore formative assessment strategies they can discuss in PLCs, they can reference during planning and in coaching conversations with administrators or our instructional coaches. What we like is each strategy is presented in a consistent way, with an overview, a step-by-step guidance, and then the strategy and action section. That consistent structure supports a shared understanding and a common language around how formative assessment strategies function in practice. And at the same time, allows us teachers to adapt these strategies to fit their content and their students. Right? For example, if we're using Think, Pair, Share, a chemistry teacher might ask students to balance a simple chemical equation related to the formation of ammonia. Right? The students think independently, they pair to compare approaches, and then they share how they determine the correct number of coefficients. That same structure could be used in an auto shop class to think through the correct sequence for torquing lug nuts after rotating tires. We can see the same pattern in math, right, where students use the Think, Pair, Share to solve and explain a system of equations, and in ceramics, right, in a ceramics class, where students think through the steps for centering clay on the wheel. Across these examples, the structure of the strategy remains consistent, even though the content and context of student thinking differ. This balance, right, supports coherence, which is super important for us, coherence across our classrooms and helps create a more consistent opportunities for students to demonstrate their thinking, while still allowing our teachers to respond instructionally to what students need. Ultimately, this helps ensure that when teachers check for understanding, they're gathering information they can use to adjust instruction while learning is still happening and bring back into their PLC conversations. And this brings us to the final piece, what this looks like in practice inside an individual classroom. Right? To bring this to life, I am pleased to introduce one of our outstanding teachers at Corona High School, Tanya Bertok, who will share how she uses formative assessment strategies in her English language arts classroom.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tanya Bertok, and I'm currently teaching 9th grade honors language arts and AP Lang and composition at the junior level at Corona High School. This is my 24th year in education, and in those 24 years, I've taught 7th through 12th grade in juvenile hall, continuation schools. I've co-taught with special ed. I worked at a military charter school, and now I'm in the comprehensive high school setting. I'd like to begin with how I was introduced to tools for teachers. Mr. Gilder and I were discussing the progress of my PLC and common formative assessments. I mentioned that we were trying to share some strategies that would keep our students engaged and still stick to our common assurances or our standards. And that's when he asked if I had ever heard of tools for teachers. And I must have had the strangest or confused look on my face because right at that moment is when he decided that he wanted to walk me through some of those resources on the website. And of course, I sat there and I listened and took some time later to really explore those resources. And then I was so excited, I shared it with my PLC, but I really was so grateful that he shared. The truth really is that in education, there are so many different strategies that we can choose from. And the most difficult part is keeping track of everything that we've tried or used over the years. The other dilemma is that if you're new to education, then you don't know where to start because there are too many websites or strategies to choose from, especially now with AI resources. And that really can be discouraging and overwhelming for anyone, a veteran teacher or a newbie. And that's why Tools for Teachers is really such a great place to start your and build your formative strategies that will explicitly drive your instruction and keep the students engaged. So I was looking for something that was in a progression that would develop a classroom environment that would foster live or real-time feedback. I was looking for engagement and trust, building a community within the classroom. So of course I started with Tools for Teachers. And while searching, I stumbled upon the oldie but goodie strategy, Think, Pair, Share. I use that on a regular basis, just I'm sure as many of you do. But I'd always like to use the same strategy repeatedly. So I had students begin with the Think, Pair, Share, and then I modified it to Share, Stand, and Sit. Basically, the strategy Share, Stand, and Sit is when each person in the group stands up, each person shares out, and when each person is done sharing, they individually sit down one at a time. This does three things simultaneously. One, it encourages all students to share in the time allotted, gives everyone a chance to share. And then as the teacher, you can see when everyone has had the opportunity to share because each person will be sitting down. As time progressed and my students became more comfortable sharing, I transitioned to write, pass, discuss, or what I call return to sender. Return to sender is essentially a group discussion. Each group has an envelope and index cards. The envelopes have a question written on them, and as a group, students will answer the question in the time allotted and write their response on an index card without looking at the other responses and put theirs inside the envelope. They'll then rotate the questions until they get their original question back. Once they do, as a group, they will go through all of the responses, develop that final answer, and then I allot time at the end where each group will share their questions and their final responses. Some of the benefits of the return to sender really is full engagement. Everyone is involved, teachers, students, groups, and the guided questions lead to these discussions and critical thinking. Ultimately, after creating a collaborative environment, and sometimes this can take several weeks or even months or the full term, the final formative assessment in that progression is the Socratic seminar. And to be completely honest, at the start of my career, I used them all the time. And then once the world shut down with the COVID, I kind of moved away from them because students would express that they were nervous and really anxious about sharing out loud. And again, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? And I decided to peruse Tools for Teachers. And there it was as a huge reminder. And I was like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about those. And I'm going to do it. And so, the reason why it works so well as an assessment is because one, is student-led and driven, focuses on content, and really promotes that critical thinking because the students have time to prep and research the content they'll be discussing in that Socratic seminar. So all three of these strategies were a driving force for what I did next in the instruction time, focusing on the PLC model. In my 9th grade PLC, we have special ed, we have ELD, we have advanced academics, and at-level courses represented. And so one of our main formative assessment goals of the PLC was to ensure that all students, had guaranteed access. And we wanted to use strategies that could be modified to meet those students' needs in the classroom. But we really had to think about two things in particular in that PLC model. What do I do if the students know it, and what do I do if they don't? So our answer now is we always go back and we start the conversation with going back to Tools for Teachers for those next steps as we're looking for strategies to teach and reteach. And really, Tools for Teachers allows for real or lifetime feedback and can guide our instruction. It gives educators of all content areas or target student groups to explore and choose the strategies that work best for their classroom and their demographics. As you saw, I modified 2 out of the 3. More importantly, the flexibility is modifying as needed for the target demographic is an absolute game changer. Whether you're looking for material for ELD, special ed, or advanced academics, it's all in one place. And then, of course, last but not least, don't forget that it's free and everybody has access and it's available for you to start perusing today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tanya and Derek. It's really powerful to hear how the strategies can be used with the different student groups, like you said. And I know that when you're trying to make something fit that doesn't quite fit with what you're doing in the classroom, the best way to do is just take it and modify it. So I love how you shared how you can modify the strategies to make them fit your own student groups. And even Derek mentioning, how you can use these strategies in different classes like ceramics. So it's not just an ELA thing. It's not just a math class thing or science now. So yeah, it's really interesting. These strategies are universal. So thank you both. I do have a couple questions to share with you, and then we'll open it up to other presenters. So Jamie, Brent, Dr. Patrice Harris, if you guys could come on, I may have a question, or if there's anything you'd like to share as well, you could think about that as I'm asking Tanya and Derek questions, and then we'll come back to you guys. So I do want to ask Derek, has it been difficult as a vice principal to share these strategies with teachers, and or maybe not difficult, but just are there tips to share these strategies? And not just, I know you have actually authored some of the lesson plans within Tools for Teachers as well. So you have a lot of experience with Tools for Teachers. And so just knowing that and speaking to that is, and you getting Tanya in there, I liked how she was like, my face dropped. I can't believe, just no, I haven't been in there. So is there any advice you could share about getting teachers started who may be reluctant?
Well, initially, I went to those folks that I know are open to try new things and who also have a lot of influence on campus. Folks look up to them, or their colleagues looked up to them. And once they start to get in there and find out, how great it is, that will spread. And then on the other side of that is you got to create time for the teachers to spend, to look in there and dig around, right? You can't just blast them with a fire hose of, hey, there's all this stuff in here. And then they go in there and then they're like, I don't have time for this. So really being intentional on finding time for them, whether that's finding a pull out or being invited to their PLCs to spend time to show them that. But initially, right, it's finding those who are willing to do it. Yes, no, that's great. I know that, getting started is pretty much
the hardest part, but once you get in there, I was the same way with this. And so it's really exciting to see what else there is in there, the lesson plans and so forth. So yeah, I hope that other principals out there or vice principals or assistant principals can get in there and share these resources just like you did, because it has shown to be very helpful. And Tanya, I did want to ask, I know you shared a lot about formative assessment strategies, but I know that you have also done accessibility strategies. Are there any, but we were trying to make sure that she shared within her time, but she has so many strategies in her back pocket. So is there anything that you'd like to share about accessibility strategies and tools for teachers?
I would definitely use with the Socratic seminar sentence frames. Those are top notch, and you give them to every student so they feel like empowered. Again, like I mentioned, the students that felt anxious and nervous about sharing, if they have that and they can rely on it and they can pause and look, and you can make them color coded and you can have them taped to the desk or however you want to, use it for your classroom. But ultimately, I think especially with that, it just gives them a tool, right, in order to be successful. And so that they're always worried about, I don't want to sound like I don't know what I'm talking about, or I don't know how to, agree to disagree in that type of setting. And so having those frames and practicing those frames before the actual seminar will be helpful.
That's great. I can actually see, with the share, stand, and sit activity, them maybe using those sentence frames as practice before they get to the Socratic seminar. Because, yeah, I do remember just seeing those sentence frames gives the students that, courage that they may need. Otherwise, a lot of them may just sit there. So that's a wonderful one. I agree.
Yeah. And there are different ways you can put it on the board. You can put it on a slide. You can put it on their desk. You can, right on their hand, whatever it happens to be. They can use them and they feel empowered. And that's what we want our kids to do. We want them to struggle with sharing their ideas. We want them to feel comfortable.
Exactly. And while you were talking, we got a question for you in the Q&A. So in the return to sender, they were asking, does each group just get one question and answers it? So it's new to this person, so they're just very curious about that.
So for example, I have 9 table stations in my classroom, and every group has a different question that they're answering. And once the timer, I do everything with timers, but let's say they have 3 minutes and they write their response on the index card. They put their index card in that envelope, and then that group or one leader will take their envelope to the next group when the timer is up. And now that group gets their question and they're receiving a question from the table next to them. And so ultimately, depending, you can set it up, 4 and 5 or all 9 questions. And it gives them an opportunity to answer all of the questions. And then once it's completed, then the original group takes out all the index cards and formulates the best response possible that they can.
Yeah, and I do want to just share with the audience that when Tanya was showing her picture of the students that were standing up and they're sharing, it could look like chaos, but we were talking about how it's controlled chaos and how really to have students standing and interacting in that way in a constructive manner like that is so powerful for the students, and also great for you as a teacher. It's just showing that they can manage themselves and do the task. And it's really neat to see them sitting down when they're done. So I really appreciate you sharing, because it does give teachers out there that much more courage to try it on their own. So it can be done. And I will turn it over to the rest of our presenters. I know there's and you got a thank you from Lisa out there too. She loves it. Thank you for sharing, Tanya. If there are any other thoughts, I know we went through this super fast, but if there's any thoughts that you guys have from your different roles that you would like to come off of mute for and share with the audience, I will pause just a moment for that.
Hey, Becky, before everybody talks, I did see one question that I thought was really good that could be a question for everyone. how are these lessons and these strategies able to be used virtually? Because I know that we have some folks out there that maybe have work at charter schools that are teaching virtually still. How can we adapt those? And I know that I heard Tanya talking about it a little bit while when she was talking about the COVID times. So I know that you all have ways that you adapt these for those lessons in the past. So.
Well, I can share what I've seen. I've seen chats used, breakout rooms, so that conversations can be held for students. At that time, I was actually at the high school during that time with COVID. So everybody got really creative with accessibility strategies and things of that sort. And they made, I will say, universal design for learning, giving that student what they needed at that time to meet mastery of the standards, really taking variations. So, for example, all the way down to some students were more comfortable with still doing things by hand, taking photos of it and uploading it. So there's a lot of different ways you can integrate accessibility into the virtual environment that I've seen. Also, other ways you can do live uh, formative assessment within the virtual classroom. So pair share, yeah, it seems like it may be a little difficult. But like I said, you can go back to breakout rooms. Gallery walks can be done virtually through a Google Classroom using PowerPoint presentations where people put in their parts, and then you create a space where students can just view. You may have a folder. So it's you can get pretty creative online, and I learned quite a bit over that time with still having the same rigor. You don't have to drop the rigor because it's virtual. You allow for that creativity for students. This teaches them survival skills and skills to work around things because, as we know, we trust technology a lot, but sometimes technology fails us. And so we're teaching those skills to our students virtually. And so I commend those who are brave enough to continue doing that. Um, but there are several ways you can still use your formative assessment strategies and accessibility. So with accessibility, I know we did a lot of recording some of the classroom lessons for students. So some of the teachers actually recorded it and put their lessons in folders so that kids could go back later if the student was ill or if something was going on with the family, to give that flexibility. And they timed it. They put it in for a certain amount of time and then locked it after a certain amount of time, so that they could document and record or do what they needed to do. So accessibility can be done online or virtual instruction, as well as formative assessments as you're delivering the lessons. I've seen it, and you just got to think outside of the box. And sometimes the kids will come up with great ways to do it. We even did a for our art class when I was at the high school. They created a virtual gallery with the kids' production. Some kids did watercolor paintings. Some kids did art by hand. They uploaded, and the teacher created a virtual library that you could move through. It was the coolest thing I've ever seen. But it can be done, and you can even have gatherings and virtual views. Even on the platform we're using right now with Zoom, there's ways that you can do that as well. And I've seen it. It's awesome.
Thank you so much. I actually love those virtual gallery walks. I've seen some amazing ones. So thank you for sharing that.
If I can add, I know Zoom, at least, I don't know if folks are using what platform they're using for virtual. They've added a lot more, like with the emojis and reactions, where you can adopt those as well. And then they have the whiteboard in there if you're using Jamboard, and show stuff like that. But they've definitely got a lot better than when COVID came. But I would say to explore those.
And along those lines, Derek, there was a question in the chat about virtual lesson plans or strategies. in the toolkit, but I'm assuming that's Tools for Teachers. And like Derek and others have mentioned, but you can actually, so a lot of these strategies come with attachments where you can just download things. And so I know when I was a teacher, I would download them and make them my own, and it's a pretty basic, PowerPoint or document. And this is true for their lesson plans as well. And you could, like Derek's saying, put them into Google Classroom or put them into things where you can add those different virtual components, like he mentioned whiteboard, and there's the post-it ones too, like all kinds of fun things. And the great thing is that Tools for Teachers, while it is behind a login, which all California educators can access, and we do have the self-registration in the resource guide. If you haven't registered before, you could do that. While it is behind a login, nothing is considered, a secure test item or anything like that, because it's lesson plans, it's for instruction. The strategies are used as well. And so you can print those materials out and share them. I heard Patrice mention taking pictures of things. That's okay for this stuff because it's not the test items. This is simply lesson plans and strategies. So it's really neat to see that her students are doing that, using those interactive ways to use the content in Tools for Teachers. So I'll pause too. I know anyone else have anything to share before we close out today?
I was just going to jump in really quick and share about accessibility strategies and how I like to use them. I think Tools for Teachers has the bank of accessibility strategies that you can go through. And I always like to offer them to all students, right? So it's like, here's an option, of course, depending on what you're aiming for in your lesson plan. But ones that I really like are the sentence frames that Tanya was talking about earlier. I even use those for myself, like when I'm going to ask and question students. When we're doing math talks, I have my own sentence frame ready to go, so that even helps me as a teacher know how I can respond with some good questions for them. And I love speech to text, text to speech. I love manipulatives. And so just having those as an option for students. When I was teaching in the high school, I had manipulatives. It was awesome. I was one of the only high school classrooms I've seen that has like the blocks and all of that. And kids could use it as they saw fit. So we'd be working on a project or an assignment or a quiz, and they'd say, hey, can I grab a couple blocks? Because that's what they needed to access the material and to show that they're understanding. And even for me personally, I was just thinking about something I have to do later today. And I was like, oh, I'm really tired. I don't want to have to type this out. And I thought, I could just use speech to text. I'm going to do my first draft speaking it first, and then I'll go back. And so I think those accessibility strategies are also really good, and it helps students take ownership of their own learning and get to know themselves and what they need to help learn.
I wanted to add one thing about modifying lessons, just something that we forget as educators, is that your first, in high school at least, like your first period class, they might need different modifications than your third or your fifth period. And so when you look at Tools for Teachers, you can say, oh, that will work great with my first period, definitely not with my fifth, but this might work with my fifth and this might work with my second, or whatever you decide. So just don't get stuck into one little basket that you have to do the same thing with all your classes. And if it flops in first period, see if you can modify it for second or for third, so that way you don't keep making that same mistake where it's chaos and you don't feel like, you have a grip of what's happening and students aren't adjusting. That's one advice, because I started like that. And when I started teaching, I'd be like, well, that's what was in my plans, and I've got to do it now, all 6 classes. And then I realized, I'm like, why didn't I just change that one thing? And it would have made the rest of the day that much better. So don't be afraid to do that. And don't be afraid to talk to your colleagues, because they've got some great ideas too.
If I can add to that, don't be afraid to talk to your administrator to ask for time to go in here and look and play around. And so don't be afraid.
I think
maybe
that's
invite them
huge.
to there so they can go there and dig in with you if they have no idea what it is. And yeah, don't be afraid. This is super powerful. It's free. And those are hard to come by in education.
Yeah, that's huge and straight from an assistant principal. So that's great. Well, we do have some final resources to share. Amy, oh, there it is. So I do want to make sure everyone is aware of this other resource that culminates kind of everything we've been doing today. So as we close this webinar out today, we have just a few more resources. The one resource linked in your resource guide that you may want to check out is a resource from Smarter Balanced called Accessibility Strategies for Teaching and Learning. And this is a document that provides a list of the accessibility strategies, some of which you've heard here today, that are on the Smarter Balanced assessments and in the Tools for Teachers website. So you can kind of bridge that gap there. It also includes a brief description of how each strategy can be used in everyday instruction, kind of like how our presenters shared today. This way, students can practice using the skill of, using a notepad in class, for example, like we heard today, then transfer that skill of note taking and use global notes. I know Jamie mentioned that. So global notes is what it's called on the assessment. So that's just one of the many great examples right here in this document. And if you'd like to further your knowledge of accessibility resources, even though you heard so much today, in 2 weeks, CDE will be hosting a webinar called Accessibility Resources Webinar from the Classroom to Assessments. So you may want to check that out. It'll be on Wednesday, February 11th, 2026 from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. And the focus will be on how to support students with their use of accessibility resources that are available for the CAASPP and ELPAC summative and interim assessments. So that's a great one to dig into now that we're getting closer to testing season for the summative, but also, to become familiar with them for interims as well. And additional tools will be highlighted during that webinar that help teachers prepare for the use of accessibility resources, including some of the tools like Tools for Teachers, which you heard about here today. So the link to register for that is also included in your resource guide, along with the emails of all the wonderful presenters that you've heard today, if you would like to reach out to them with further questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy to share our closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Becky and Jamie, Brent, Patrice, Derek, Tanya. All of you did such a great job today, and I feel like I learned so much. Thank you for sharing your strategies that can be used in all roles with teachers, students, and a variety of student groups. It was wonderful. And with that, I'd like to remind you about the remaining 2 webinars in this series that are coming up soon. Thursday, February 12th, from 3:30 to 5 p.m., By Teachers for Teachers, Unlocking Classroom-Ready Science Resources is coming up. And then Thursday, February 26th, all the way at the end of the month, also from 3:30 to 5, Professional Learning Resources for Supporting English Learners. If you haven't already registered for those, please do so. The link is in your resource guide. And with that brings us to the end. Thank you to all of our presenters today and for all of you who've joined us today. We look forward to seeing you at our upcoming sessions in the next 2 weeks on February 12th and on the 26th. Thank you. Have a good rest of your week, everyone. Bye-bye.